Hey, thank you, Ray, and great panel. So I am the host and moderator for the next session focused on the AI infrastructure boom, looking at highly scalable AI optimized networks. This will be a little bit different in a couple of contexts. Of course, we have a separate group of panelists who we'll bring in a moment, so we'll get their perspectives, but also really going to focus more on the infrastructure, the fibers in the ground and the connectivity of them and the physical structures and that sort of thing. We're also going to get a data center operator's viewpoint, so kind of an interesting element in the mix of ecosystem, which we've talked a lot about today. And also, we're going to talk about NAS, but also a little bit more broader than NAS, because the infrastructure challenges and requirements are broader than the network as a service. I've just got a couple slides I'll run through just to set the context for the session, and we may or may not refer to them as we go through the panel. But we're focusing on connectivity in this panel. But really, as has been indicated throughout today's session, energy and power decisions are really what's driving where the data centers are being deployed, the new ones. So this slide I put together, and it's really a moving target. There's new massive builds being announced throughout the United States and even globally on a weekly basis, and this could keep getting filled out. But we are very quickly moving to gigawatt data centers. As was mentioned in an earlier session, a gigawatt of power will run among the largest cities in the United States, and there's multiples of these coming online. Next year, just in the US alone, they are going in places that are not traditional hubs for connectivity. Northern Virginia, the Pacific Northwest, Phoenix. They're sometimes sort of close, sometimes totally remote. So this has huge implications for connectivity. Connectivity is not the driver for where these are being put, so then the connectivity needs to be figured out, and that's clearly an infrastructure problem that needs to be solved. The types of connectivity we'll talk about, I just put this together as a simple view of the different types, because they can get kind of mixed up a lot. But there's, most of the focus is on the top version or top iteration there, AI data center connectivity, scale across connectivity as it's typically being called. This is where dark fibers are going, managed optical fiber networks. These are the hyperscalers are driving this, massive amounts of builds going on. One of my colleagues is also keying in, Ian Redpath at Omdia is keying into this enterprise model training, enterprise data lakes connecting to training data centers for, as the world moves to more specific, customized industry and company specific. So that'll be a different type of connectivity. And then the third one is enterprise inference using consumption of the models. I put an edge data center here just to kind of differentiate. There's debate whether that'll actually be an edge facility or just something, but the idea is closer to the users is where most of that data would come. And there's actually a fourth element, which our panelists from the data center operator will get into for sure, is within the data center itself, there's a lot of connectivity going on, and actually probably one of the big places where you're going to see NAS in the AI context. We did a survey earlier in the year with Sienna helping us with that survey, and we asked a bunch of questions around AI, but this was interesting because it was particularly AI for communication service providers, the telco market, and how they're expecting to adopt in their views of AI. And we asked them about traffic on their network, traffic volume, and how much of an impact AI is going to have over the next 3 years. And they were very optimistic, I would say. Metro and long haul, a bit more higher expectations for long haul, but a large number of these CSPs interviewed, surveyed, expecting majority volume of traffic from AI in the next couple of years. Very optimistic. This stuff is never right, by the way. It's just a point in time of how the operators are thinking of their future, and quite bullish on AI's impacts. My very last slide before I bring on the panelists ties into the same kind of point. We asked them about what types of connectivity services will be their primary growth drivers from AI. Most of the activity right now is into dark fiber, and dark fiber is still going to be there, but these CSPs interviewed or surveyed are really betting heavily on wavelength services, which means they're anticipating there's going to be a different type of connectivity going forward than these AI training data centers. They're really expecting a move to enterprise, including enterprise training and inference. Again, very lofty expectations. Probably will not happen as this shows, but certainly showing where the service providers are planning. And just from this conference and other discussions I've had with service providers, you know, they are definitely planning towards this direction. So I think it is a pretty good indicator in that sense. With that, like I said, I may refer to these a bit more as we go through, but I do want to bring out all our panelists and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with a couple topics. So we'll bring out our panel now. Great, as I said, we've got a good mix of service providers as well as a data center operator perspective for this one. So I'll just let you each kind of go down the line, brief introduction of yourselves and your roles, and then we'll jump into it. And start with you, Rob.
Yeah, hi everybody, Rob Ward with Lumen. I've got responsibility for really our network architecture as well as engineering our products, our network products. I spent couple of years developing and bringing to market our Lumen's NAS offer. More recently, been spending a lot of time in this space, really understanding AI trends, working with customers of different segments, and kind of right in the heart of what we're talking about today. So.
All right, sounds good. Paul with Verizon.
Hi, Paul Rella. So I'm the AVP for what we call our NAS Solutions Group. I created that group about 4.5 years ago, really to tie in. And our NAS is a little bit more broad than just some of the definitions. We actually base it on a site type. We tie in SLAs, managed services all together with a portal that really brings it together of wireline, wireless, public, and private traffic. And then we play in all of the traditional wireline services, private IP, public IP, along with dark fiber and our wave solution sets. And just happy to talk about the AI boom here. So.
All right, Travis.
Cool, thanks, Paul. Travis Seward, I guess as you said, I'm the only or the sole data center operator.
You're the data center.
So I'll do my darndest to represent the group, so to speak, and I oversee our platform development it's really on the network architecture, engineering, software dev, other disciplines within the company. So I don't know if Pascal's out there, but I was telling Sterling, I told him a year ago, I said, hey, NAS has finally found its day in the sun. Related to AI, so we'll get into more of that. So.
Yep. And last but not least, Srikanth.
Hey, hi, Srikanth here. I'm the solutions architect from Singtel, Singapore Telecommunications, which earlier, we were primarily focused into the connectivity solutions. But as it goes on, now, we focus on security, NAS, and other AI-related infrastructure solutions. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. I showed a chart on traffic, expectations for traffic volume on CSP networks. Really curious from the three service providers how AI traffic is impacting your networks today, and then if you want to speculate over the next couple of years, the impacts. But, and I'll just preface that with saying, all these huge builds that are going in right now, a lot of that traffic is hyperscaler to data center to hyperscaler and is not actually touching the CSP network. So it is a big question of to what degree and when this stuff hits your network. So maybe Rob, kick it off and
sure.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a few dimensions in there. We talk a lot about just the scale, and that's just one portion. It's a big portion. We're talking about really massive amounts of fiber going in the ground, just a ton of capacity being added. But I think there's a couple other dimensions in terms of the geographies, which I think a few folks have touched on, as well as the interconnectedness and interdependency of applications, right? So the geography, meaning that I'll call them the telecom corridors that we've historically seen, those are shifting, right? And I think, Sterling, you showed a map that sort of depicted sort of the dispersion into different areas driven by a number of factors. So I think that's changing how we think about the topology of our network, where we deploy it. But I think that interdependency between applications is something a bit new for us as well, and maybe for enterprises in general, that where they have maybe in the past had maybe private data centers and a couple of spots in the cloud to run their business. It becomes much more distributed, different partners, different locations, different applications that are going to be interacting, across the domain and across the network. I think our networks need to be able to support that in an efficient way.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, so we're seeing a really incredible demand. Fiber-wise, we're pretty set. You heard Jeff Hull speak earlier today about a lot of the investment in fiber. But what I find interesting, and we've talked a couple of us today about this, is the demand. So before, where I'd get maybe 1 to 3 requests for 100 gig or 400 gig circuit, I'm getting, can I get 30 100 gigs? Can I get 40, 400 gigs these sites? So, and the delivery, right? So it's not only the bandwidth, but the delivery times have shrunk. For a lot of us in the industry, Wave has been more of a just-in-time provisioning, right? We get the order, we know we've got time, maybe a lateral build to get the customer on site. You've got 90 days plus. Now the request we're getting is, hey, I not only do we need 40, but I want them in 30 days. And we've seen others in the announcement, you guys especially as well as AT&T and others, are out there, right, with that major demand. So to me, it's really getting ahead of the supply chain, because we're all asking for the same equipment. We've all got long lead times, right? So it's a race of who gets the order in and gets the devices, to then be able to have that programmability, right? You can't program over the top. It's a little easier on the, I'd say, the packet-based solution sets, right? Layer 2, layer 3 solutions. But Wave definitely needs this infusion of making sure that we're able to orchestrate and deliver those solutions right to that customer base. So that's really the main drivers I see.
Yeah, when you talk about the delivery times being shortened to near real time-ish, is that primarily driven by AI? Or are there other drivers for more?
It definitely is, because the providers that are asking us are more getting ready for that AI workload. They're using those inferencing models and getting there. That's the bigger demand. I don't see most other companies, when they ask me for 100 or 400 gig, there's still coordination with their router folks, their server folks. If they're using it for other applications, it's a little bit longer lead time compared to folks that already know where they want to go. Right? They know where the data load is, they know where they want to hit. And then we're also seeing it, especially as you showed that map, I'm seeing a lot more requests for secondary and tertiary markets as well. Which
exactly.
Is making us catch up to routes. And then the last thing on routes, I'd say, a bigger request for all buried routes. I hadn't seen that before. A lot of folks were okay with some mix of aerial and buried. Now they're saying, no, I want this particular route, and I also want this with all buried infrastructure, which can add cost and time for delivery there.
Right.
And a little bit of latency.
Right. On demand, I mean, it's physical stuff, so on demand is a lot tougher in the physical world than bits.
Exactly.
Srikanth, the Asia Pacific perspective would be, there's a lot going on. I'm only tuned into a little bit of it, but I know certain regions of South Asia are becoming massive hubs. Just what are you seeing for demands?
Oh yeah, definitely. We see this more relevant now that AI is becoming one of the big force for the bandwidth demands. And if you go outside of the US, we can see other major hubs in the Pacific, something like Japan, Singapore, Australia, and even to some extent even Taiwan, where we need a lot of data pipes. At the same time, all these would be connecting back most likely to the US. So all the undersea cables, which generally take a couple of years to really build and subscribe to the customers. Now it's, once it has been launched, within few months it is over, and they're ready to push for the next upgrades and going on. We can see this huge momentum going on, even in the Asia side. And yeah, that's the main what we see.
How far into that cycle do you think we are right now in terms of the Asia Pac build for subsea cables? Is it pretty far along, or?
Oh yeah, I think there was already some shortage because of the pandemic, and slowly once it has got, we can see, the cables are getting readied. But with this AI demand, I think we can see most of them are already been exhausted. And at the same time, for the GPU, still it has been coming towards the US side, where they wanted to use these GPU as a service kind of a model. So the WAN becomes one of the critical portion for the connectivity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, let me move to the next topic. I want to get into use cases for, so this, we're focusing on network as a service, and then more generally, this one I want to focus on the network as a service for supporting AI and looking at use cases. But with use cases, it's easy to talk about all kinds of wonderful things that are going to happen. So let's focus this on the immediate term, like what's available now, and if you need to kind of push out a horizon, within the next 12 months is going to happen. What are the primary NAS use cases you're seeing supporting specifically the AI? Maybe start with Rob, and we'll go down. Travis, I'll I think I'll take you last on this one because you're going to have a mix of perspectives, but we'll start with Paul. Start with Rob, sorry.
Yeah, I think there's, we kind of carve up, this application space. We're sort of seeing this stratification of the network and where some of these live. And similar to your diagram, Sterling, as you kind of carve out those different maybe applications, right? From really core high speed, connectivity. So dark fiber, maybe high capacity waves, which has, as you say, it's maybe more physical in nature, a little bit less of a NAS feel today. But I think even with that adaptability that we're seeing, that's driving the sort of the rapid, service activation demands, I think it is that adaptability that I think enterprises are looking for. I mean, we can't predict what's going to be here 3 years from now, even 1 year from now, perhaps. So I think it is that adaptability. And so as much as we can push that level of activation, customization, manageability into a wavelength service layer that can operate in sort of those top two use cases that you'd shown. I think that will be valuable and certainly something that Lumen is looking for. The use cases that we really see as the sort of the heart of the customer experience today is in that cloud edge access and sort of consumption of AI or ingestion of data, multi-cloud use cases that we're seeing growing demand in that today. And as we sort of broaden the portfolio to really make that multi-cloud access and connectivity easier, expecting to see a lot more demand there.
All right, Paul, you're focused specifically on NAS for Verizon. So kind of narrow that to the ones that are applicable to AI and with the near-term focus.
Sure, it's still about the programmability and the agility, right? The customers have gotten used to working with the cloud service providers, being able to spin up their environments, right? Be very agile, interesting pricing mechanism to make sure they can consume it correctly. And they're looking to us providers, right? Saying, I know you guys are 100 years old, right? You've been around for a while, but you need to modernize, right? And get out of this mode of, a few years ago, we were still using ASRs between us, right? Fax machines, that was still just a couple of years ago. So we've come a long way in a short time, but they expect that level of agility, not only in the data centers, but as we're talking about getting to the mobile edge compute on the private side as well, being able to spin these up and down. And then you asked a little bit about the future, and we spent a lot of time in the last few years building data lakes, making sure we've got AI ops, right, and the data scientists to take the data that's out there and turn it into actionable information in AI ops. Things like device health scores, right, the security health scores, because security is a big piece of this that we don't always talk about with just the transport pieces for AI. But the next step, and we heard some of the folks talking on the previous panel, is agentic. That's really where we want to go, where I want agents talking to each other within my infrastructure before I release them out, right? So that we don't have to call a help desk. I don't want someone to have to talk to somebody if they don't need to. I want the customer to either get it from my portal that says, hey, we saw this, we identified this, we fixed this, let's go. Or if they're a larger customer, they want to ingest that at the API layer themselves. Right. And be able to do that. But we talked in the other panel, you heard about some of the protections and guardrails you need. I think we take a page out of where we are with APIs. APIs are extremely powerful, but we put guardrails around that to make sure they're secure, right, actionable. The same thing has to happen with the agentic agents too.
Have you guys sorted out, and this gets into the pie in the, not pie in the sky, but what is it, blue sky, I don't know, the unknowns, the singularity. How traffic is impacted by, everybody wants to move to agentic AI, that's wonderful, there's lots of monetization, which everyone's going to want to talk about, but the network impacts of that, is that just an absolute unknown, or is that plannable?
It kind of is. We do a lot of proof of concepts, and we even just a month or two ago, we have hackathons every so often too, where we have different parts of the company get together, different groups even, not just the software nerds, we get the engineering folks together, and they form little teams. And they sit down and say, look, once again, pie in the sky, what could I do if I had this? And then build it and build some small prototypes, be able to test these things. It's really, really exciting to see what happens. And not all of them work, a lot of them fail, which is fine, but fail fast, fail quickly, learn your lesson, and then build upon that.
But there's ways to learn. Srikant, and then I'll bring in Travis. For the international perspective, you have a different set of customers maybe. Different use cases that you're seeing around AI, are they different, or
Yeah, pretty much I think it's been covered, when Rob and Paul were talking about it. But even if I take back the other way, even how we can use AI within a telecom organization per se, we have, in terms of like having like a digital twin to emulate our own network. And this will help us to replicate any what-if scenarios, what if this fails, or based on these logs, what are the next assumptions that can be made. So even if you internalize this AI within our own infrastructure, we can see exactly all, how we can bring in all the components into one play, and that will also help us in maintaining our own network, where we have hundreds of POPs, and once this becomes like mainstream, probably this can be becoming like a service to the end customers, where we can extend our network with their network so that the end customers will have a full visibility on a single pane. So that's another use case which we can.
Okay, excellent. And then Travis, definitely want to bring you in. I've been working with you a bit on defining NAS, and there's certainly the AI WAN, which is what I showed on the slide, but then there's also inside the data center, and you would have a perspective on both. And I'm wondering, is the primary applications for NAS around AI stuff within the data center itself?
Well, yes and no, I'll elaborate. So per my shout out before on NAS has finally found its day under the sun. So I'll tell you, and this is from real life customers and traffic we have right now. So from a multi-site inferencing perspective, on a per site by site basis, what does that site need? There's a private public piece if you're got a consumer focus, so it's public internet, it's WAN, it's management network, it's neoclouds, it's CSPs or hyperscalers. So everything I just said is a turn it up, turn it down, connectivity. Maybe some of it stays up like the WAN traffic, but even on the WAN traffic, some of these early customers, they literally want to do load sharing or follow the sun with some of that inference traffic, which is interesting. But everything I just said, and for a lot of these players, it's not a portal thing. They have a controller, they have their own orchestrator, they want to hit it with an API. So like I said, everything a number of us have been working on for going on 2 decades around NAS is being taken advantage of just in a per site instance for something multi-site inference. But back to your question on what's in the data center, we really look at it kind of at three levels. There's inside the data center, there's inside a campus, because how digital realty rolls is when we commit to a metro, it's a campus. We may have 20, 30 data centers within a campus. So that connectivity, which, whether it's within a campus or even on the WAN side. So my buddy Rob and I just did an announcement here a few weeks ago for taking advantage of we're generically calling it AI WAN. And, Verizon's got similar and others where the long haul connectivity, we're not building 400 gig, 800 gig, whatever network. So we need these players to connect our locations, or even what they bring too is the next generation connections to the NEOs, to the no man's land training centers, which we're not building to. We'll chase inference, not training. We've said that publicly before. But within a data center, the next level is that of what we're calling physical NAS. So when you're leveraging, whether it's optical switching, robotic cross-connect automation, how do we even make those connections within a data center, within a campus, to do something that used to be physical and truck roll and running jumpers to something more automated? So we've got examples of that in use right now as well. So it's kind of everything under the sun.
Yeah, the inside the data center, the physical NAS, the switching, is that stuff that's available, or what level of development is?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's in pilot use now. We have it deployed in a few locations just for us. I call it truck roll avoidance, where we're not having to to run remote hands out to a location to run a cross connect or a patch panel connection.
And who are
some of that in early form?
Who are the types of customers for that?
That's everything. I mean, if you look at how we sit, we've got, frankly, everybody in this room is a customer or a partner of ours, most likely from an enterprise or a network service provider or other. But that's on the carrier side. It's on the big content side. It's the application providers, all the hyperscalers. So it's without naming names, what we've been seeing, even to your chart on just fiber growth, our conduit offering fiber, conduit fiber offering, crazy the amount of growth. I mean, we've seen over the last 5 quarters, I think it's 3 record quarters sales of just localized growth within building/campus, just for building out to all these more localized of traffic flows, which is just nuts.
Yeah, maybe jump to the partnerships. I'll let you stay with this, and then we'll bring in the others. But since you are kind of the different player on the panel and really in the context of most of the event. Maybe talk to partner. You mentioned one with Lumen, but what is needed? Specifically for AI. When you say partnership, is there like a couple different buckets of what those fall into?
Yeah, no, it's a big bucket, and we've been proud of the fact that we've truly been open. And when we say our fabric or our global SDN, it's a fabric of fabrics. So Paul, if he's out here from Console Connect, who was up earlier today, we've got Console, we've got Megaport, we've got other of the NSPs that are part of our fabric and extension, and how we can get to more cloud on-ramps than anybody else, and data center locations, whatever. It's through that ecosystem, N and I connected. But specifically, Sterling, it was about a year and a half ago, we were the first to announce what we call AI Private Exchange. So we kind of view that as kind of a third generation of exchange. You had internet, then it was cloud or dedicated cloud, and now it was AI ecosystem. Because if you haven't already figured this out, a lot of this traffic is not showing up on the public internet, right?
Right.
So that being the case, so this exchange or this connectivity fabric we put in place, not too much different than what we heard from Lumen today around Cloud 2.0, is the ability to have access to partners for training, for inference, for model/data, for RAG, we got a whole ecosystem of partners that we've got on that, where via a portal marketplace, other environment, you can get out there and build your AI, call it early use case pilot, and then move to production through exchange like that. So what that brings in is a whole bunch of new players. It's the neo clouds, it's the storage folks, security folks, others in that mix.
Yeah. For the others, in terms of partnerships and ecosystems, what do you see as the main requirements around AI? Whoever wants to jump on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the landscape right now is becoming more complex for these enterprises looking for getting from premise or data center to Travis's data centers, to clouds, to neo clouds, and then the applications that sit on top of that. I think these partnerships that we're talking about are really critical to deliver really a ready-made AI solution for a lot of these customers. And there's many of them that you'll be savvy enough to put all those different pieces together, but probably the large majority are not. We know this whole landscape is continuing to change. So I think really having the partnership across service providers. I can't get to every building. Paul can't get to every building. We have to be able to work together and deliver that in a digital experience that our customers want. But again, going beyond that to data center providers, to neo clouds, to other applications, I think that's really going to be critical toward the adoption of AI going forward.
All right.
Yeah, I concur, like what Travis talked about, the marketplace of having the tools there, and how Rob spoke about it as well. You've got to have that together. I see a lot of interest in the mid-market space too. Like the large global enterprises, they spend more money on their portals than frankly we do a lot of times, right? But that mid-market customer is trying to get there. They're trying to understand what tools they need, right? What connectivity options they have, how they can consume them correctly. And then to Rob's point about the interconnected piece. I mean, I spoke up here a couple of years ago, and we had a panel, and someone said, well, if we interop, Paul, we do all the LSOs, do all this thing, don't we lose our differentiation? And I said, no, we never cared back in the Sonnet days. I'm an old dude. If I go back to Sonnet, we carried first, middle, last mile. We didn't care who did it. We knew that we had customers in certain areas. We had to get them there. To Rob's point, we don't always have that first mile access. We have to work together there. What really sets us apart, I believe, is our service wrapper for everybody, right? How you bring that ecosystem together, how the customer consumes it, how you show up on day one, right? So day zero before day one when you turn it up, the test and turn it piece, which needs to be a lot more automated than it is today. And then your day two support with, things are going to break. How quickly can you fix that? And in this new environment, it's got to be super fast, right? We know that latency can be, part of an issue. We saw it today. The graph wasn't as intense, but there's still packet loss. Packet loss can really, really destroy that inferencing model that you're working on. So really, it's pulling it all together, those partners, and to give the customer one seamless, holistic solution that gives them that end-to-end visibility along with security.
All right, Srikant, anything to add?
Oh yeah, I think when it comes to even the international networks, we can see it becomes even more challenging.
Right.
And we need to cross over many providers, many networks, before we reach to the destination. So yes, someone like, something which has a complete visibility, because right now we can see everyone is working on their own networks. So that's where we can see one of the challenges, and something on the ecosystem where everyone is trying to integrate with others so that we have an end-to-end visibility, which is, I would say, in Asia, still work in progress. And yeah, it'll take a little bit more time before we come to that kind of a play.
Right. What would you say, and I'd open it to the other panelists as well, but what would you say are the biggest gaps today from achieving, basically what everybody's just described, that level of interop? What needs to be addressed most urgently?
Oh yeah, when we bring NAS, and when we bring all the solutions to the customers, from the AI point of view, since the data or the bandwidth on demand is quite a high thing, and at the same time, we can see where the customer wanted to have this as a low latency. Earlier, low latency was already there in many of the telcos, but it was built more for something like for financial kind of a traffic, where it was 1 gigs, 10 gigs kind of a thing. Versus what we see right now is actually like 100 gigs or more than that, where we need the backbone to be ready for that kind of an agility, and that's where I would say one of the gaps from any telco point of view.
All right. Yeah. Others in terms of gaps, and maybe even to bring in Mplify, since we're at their event, where what are the biggest gaps, and where could work from Mplify be helpful?
I'd throw one out. I mean, call it opportunity. So when Pascal's chart up earlier today showed sovereign AI as the long term, I'd suggest if you're not working on that right now, you're going to miss that boat. And there he is. So Pascal, I'm not trying to take a shot at your slide, but from a sovereign AI perspective, even as you define jurisdictions, and we kind of show up different being a global operator. Is that in a building? Is that in a geography or country or geopolitical? I tell you, those definitions of jurisdictions are changing quickly around, okay, I'm control of my data, my instance, my end-to-end whatever. And then what's interesting about that too, that's one consideration from a networking perspective, but from an orchestration control and all that access on authentication, administration policy, logging, all those other things as well, you better have that built into your orchestration framework to be able to police that, manage that for data, not just in and out, but in cases where it's even through. So I would say as an industry, and that's where clearly Mplify can help, from a, as we heard earlier today, not just API, if you're not doing that like always from an MCP and broader, agent to agent type of communication, and it's not your traditional token other exchange like we knew it from the good old days, not quite ASR, but still legacy, right? So
100%.
Yeah, anyone else want to weigh in on biggest gaps and maybe where Mplify would be relevant or most relevant?
Yeah, I think the MCP is definitely something we talked about today a lot, right? Being able to interconnect those pieces. I'd still say that there is more work needed from all of us to get together and build these components. I mean, we talk a lot, but we haven't gone to that next level. And the agents are going to be huge in this and how we bring those together. Because, like as mentioned before, it's an extension of that API piece. We need to get really in rooms. And one of my companies, we talked about the best thing to have for your day is a dirty whiteboard session. We need some dirty whiteboards where we get in a room and we start talking about how we do this stuff. We work with Mplify as well. They've done a great job. I remember the mess that Ethernet was when it came out, and we couldn't interconnect to anybody. Right. And it was really just a dire situation. We're not there now, but we have some bigger steps to get to through AI, and the change of rate of pace is so intense that 6 months in this market, things change versus traditional telecoms. We took a few years sometimes to make it happen. Now it's this rate of change. We have to stay in that agile environment to be able to get us there together.
Are the right people getting together for the dirty whiteboard at this point? In other words, the hyperscalers and the neoclouds aren't super present here, and generally in really most of the conferences I go to that are telco focused. Are they the right level? And your colleague Jeff Hulse this morning, if you caught his talk, said, if you're not doing things what the hyperscalers require, they go off and do it themselves, and they've done that over and over again.
And that's where they are. No, they're not some of these, which is something that would be neat to have them. They're asking for a lot of questions. It's interesting to see their outside-in model, right, versus our inside-out a lot of times. But no, they are impatient, which is great, right? But to your point, if you don't offer them what they want and they want it now, delivery, I told you that delivery window is shrinking so intensely. They'll just go out and build. They'll overbuild an area dark fiber and light their up. We're even getting requests for ILAs as a service, right? Where they want dark fiber and then they want us to manage the hut, right? The whole infrastructure for them. Well, they have their own, kind of like a dim fiber solution, basically.
Yeah, is that a good model for you guys or for Lumen?
It definitely is. We made an announcement on a dark fiber side with AWS last week for a big area. We're getting more and more, but it's very selective in the routes they're asking for. They're still asking for a lot of wave in most areas, but areas where they just feel they have a huge demand, they're saying they want to go in dark fiber.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big area for us. It's pretty high scale there, and we're happy to do that because that's really the scale that they need, and I think it's sort of at that high end of that continuum, and kind of work down from there into sort of partial fiber, and then down into the wavelengths. But it's definitely a model that we're happy to support.
Do you think enterprises will do a similar thing, or are enterprises going to be primarily wave based, like as they get more and more into AI and become more sophisticated? Would they look like a hyperscaler, or are they going to rely on you guys more for managed waves and stuff?
Yeah, not all enterprises created equal again, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll probably have some that may start to, I think we see some that are sort of encroaching that direction, that are more sort of central to, frankly, central to the AI ecosystem, that are beginning to look at some of those solutions. Probably not at quite the scale and volume.
Yeah, right.
So they'll be, very.
Right. We've got about 3 minutes left, so maybe just 2 minutes on a big topic, technical and market challenges for AI. So, putting NAS aside, but just for building this infrastructure for AI, supporting everybody that is going to need it, what would you say, either technology or non-technology challenge? What's the biggest thing, kind of the keeping you up at night question? And anybody who wants to jump in on that, Travis, you look like.
Yeah, I mean, we met with one of and we had a long-standing relationship with NVIDIA, just turned up one of their first Vera Rubin AI factories. So there's long-standing history with them. But one of their senior execs told us a number of months back, she pleaded with us and she said, can you make it simple, especially for the enterprise, which is, okay, I got a data science piece, I got an infrastructure piece, I got to land this space power cooling, what's liquid cooling, then all the rest of it and manage it, then the multi-cloud and NAS and all that stuff. So anybody that can package up an AI factory is kind of the reference, even the mini pods where it can go on a multiple site basis or a single site basis. So we're in kind of the advantage we have. We'll work with anyone to kind of put that together. We've already announced a few of these, but the better job we can do as an enterprise to come together, back to your dirty, the vast-reaching dirty whiteboard, to come up with a solution that for an enterprise could just consume as a simple SKU. I need a small, medium, or large, and I need one site or 20 sites across these geographies. If we could figure that out, that'd be good for everybody.
Yeah, I key on that. We've gone to universal support concept, and you guys, Digital Reality, and others as well, have gone there and simplified. Like, we love our complexity in telecom, right?
Yeah.
We've got E-line service, we've got layer 3 services, IPVPN, we've got internet services. The way I see it consuming the data centers now is you got a port. If you do nothing, it's a layer 2 Ethernet point-to-point port, right? You want to go internet? Throw a cloud router, cloud firewall in there. Same with IPVPN. Make the consumption super simple for the customer. Make it so they don't have to worry about LOA and CFA. All these things are taken care of in the connection that instantly is able to bring up that customer to their workload.
And maybe a slightly different angle, I think, from the construction aspect. There's a lot of, permitting, regulatory, obstacles that we have to overcome. There's, power. I mean, it's amazing the power density and efficiency that we've improved. The technology vendors improved over time. Yet power consumption, absolute power consumption, is still going through the roof. And then ultimately supply chain, right? And I think Paul referenced it earlier. We're all kind of going after the same, ultimately raw materials, components, systems, and solutions. And so that's
what's the weakest link there? The most vulnerable, I guess.
Most vulnerable. I don't know if it's most vulnerable. I think fiber is definitely glass is one that's in very high demand right now.
Yeah, hard to,
there could be a lot of components. I'm not sure we've seen the worst of the supply chain yet.
Okay. Not yet.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Any last?
Maybe last, I think on the international, one of the challenge what we see is because of the geopolitical things, we have to build a eastern stack and a western stack, even in this, because maybe some countries don't want to use some providers and vice versa. So for that, we have to building like 2 different stacks for the same.
The opposite of keep it simple, but yeah. Great, we are out of time. Yeah, I want to thank our panelists for a great discussion. I learned a lot. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.